we've learned to use humor as a tool to get us through even the darkest of moments, and use it at the darkest of times, sometimes to our detriment maybe, but also sometimes it really shocks people where we choose to use humor, I think. Particularly with Americans, I've always found they're like, you're laughing at that? I'm like, well... So much of this experience was driven by that, by trust, by Ken imbuing myself, Caitriona certainly, if we can talk about that as our own kind of like unit, which it felt like it was sometimes, and then Pop and Granny were their own thing, and then the boys were their own thing, but then collectively we had our own thing going on too. You know, it felt very much like that. And I know for Caitriona and I, we've never felt trusted so much on a set before, and I think a lot of that was down to Ken going, you guys bring what you want to bring to this, and I'm not going to try to say my father wouldn't have responded like that, or my father wouldn't have found that as funny as you're playing it, or whatever it was. He was just like, I guess also to create that slight separation that like, this is, fact by fact what happened in my life. Like about 90% of this did happen, and all the main events are truthful to what really happened, but he definitely, there's room for us to do what we wanted to do with the characters.
You all have a story to tell. But what? His
real name was William, and he got called Billy. I think that speaks into what Ken wanted it to be in terms of like semi-autobiographical, you know what I mean? Not like, you are playing my father, this is the true representation of who my father was. It actually, in a lovely way, gave us more control to do something that we wanted to do with it, for Caitriona and I, and for Kieran and Judi Dench, because we're all just called like Ma, Pa, Pop, Granny, you know what I mean? So it was like, we were just like the every version of these people rather than specifically Ken's family. And I feel like early on, I wouldn't say it was steering me away from it, but like, I got the impression early on that like he wanted my interpretation of this man that was on the paper, rather than him trying to mold me into who exactly his father was. I obviously had photographs of his father. We steered away from having any video footage. I actually don't know if any existed, but if it did, Ken wouldn't have wanted me to see it, because again, he was like, you do your thing with it, I trust you. I am from Belfast. My father was from Belfast, his father before him. I come from a long line of men from Belfast, so I luckily have a deep set inbuilt understanding of men from that part of the world, which you don't often get with a job. It was a lucky one for me in that respect. In my opinion, it is someone who works hard, is all about family, who finds humor in everything. That's something that's kind of in most people from the island of Ireland anyway. We've learned to use humor as a tool to get us through even the darkest of moments, and use it at the darkest of times, sometimes to our detriment maybe, but also sometimes it really shocks people where we choose to use humor, I think. Particularly with Americans, I've always found they're like, you're laughing at that? I'm like, well, I think that's probably the elements that would go into the stew that makes a Belfast man.
The whole family looks out for you.
Be good, son. If you can't be good, be careful.
I left Belfast 20 years ago. I've spent a lot of those 20 years traveling around the world, working in different parts of the world, meeting lots of different interesting, creative, cool people. Met a lot of people who aren't cool and creative and interesting also along the way. But there's often quite a visceral reaction to when you tell people that you're from Belfast. A lot of people can't really believe it, that they have this idea that it's just like the Gaza Strip or something, and it's just, and then you look back. I've been writing something that in the last couple of years that's all set in Belfast, and doing so much research on it's set in the early 90s at home. When you see the footage, the news footage from that time, and you read back and you remember back what was going on for almost consistently for the whole 30 years, it was bleak, it really was. And when you're there, you're sort of taking it for granted. It's not having the impact really that, the news is sort of the same every night, and you get used to it in a quite a sad way. But now when you see that, look back and see the footage that was being beamed across the world, and no wonder people have that idea of what Belfast is. You know, they're just seeing rioting in the streets and people throwing petrol bombs at each other and bombs going off and people dying and people on the same different sides of the street killing each other. Like that is what the news was from home. So, but if you're there, you know that the much of the reality is very different from that. And as you said, like we've seen great films that tackle the troubles with you know, In the Name of the Father with Jim Sheridan back in the day, and even more, and a couple of films that Jim did actually in more recent times. Yann Demange did it with 71, and so what Steve McQueen did with Hunger, and they're all very politicized views. And Belfast, what Kenneth Branagh's done with Belfast, hasn't been done before. We haven't seen it through the eyes of regular people, you know, normal hardworking families who have just been caught up in the middle of all this, who didn't go looking for it, didn't instigate it, weren't trying to get involved in a way or picking sides. And there's a big majority of people at home who that was their experience of it, and that hasn't been shown before. And see it through the innocent eyes of a 9-year-old boy who definitely didn't look for it or want it, or has not picked a side or chosen a party or aligned himself with anything. That's important. That's an important message for people to see, because that was always my understanding of it. Like, you didn't have to be politicized or driven by religion or whatever it was. That there were people who just didn't want it and wanted a peace, you know, a peaceful environment. And this captures that, and I think that's really important. It's important for the people of Belfast to have that portrayed. It's also important for people across the world to see this and go, oh right, they're not all just like, it's not just filled with like hate, you know, they're normal people there. It's important for them to have, when they do go to cinema, be in colour, when they do go to the theatre to be in colour. It's really impactful, you know, it really is. There's a little bit of a, you know, a vanity aspect of being an actor and told that you're going to be in black and white. That is comforting, because you know you look better in black and white. That's just, you know, let's be honest, we all do that with photographs or whatever, and be like, oh, it doesn't look great. Oh, look, let's switch it to black. Oh, we look great. So, there's a bit of that too. I think it benefits it massively, and to talk to that sort of documentary style, that sometimes is the case. And Harris Zambalukas, our DP, was just incredible. But again, keeping it in that perspective of a 9-year-old boy, and like being in and amongst it and being small and seeing this world sort of explode around you, figuratively and literally, just put you in it, you know, put you as an audience member. It just made it feel very authentic, I think, rather than like very stagey setups, you know. You know, no marriage is perfect, is it? It's not even an attainable thing. But at the core of any good marriage that works, that able to ride out the bad moments, is that you really do love each other. And you can love each other and get very annoyed at each other. You can love each other and throw plates at each other. And I personally don't have that kind of thing. I don't have that sort of violence in me to like throw plates. But, you know, they did. I just consider myself so fortunate to have had a dance partner like Caitriona in this movie. You know, we really, really met at the same page every time. We were never combative in our plans for how we thought the energy of the scene should be. That also always fell in line, luckily, with what Ken had in mind. You know, he also, as I said at the beginning, like he always sort of gave us this freedom to like do what we wanted to do and trusted our instincts. And not usually, 100% of the time, our instincts were identical. Caitriona and I, truly, I really mean that, like they were identical. And they just worked in symmetry with each other, and it was always cohesive. And that was just luck of the draw, maybe a bit, maybe very clever on Ken's part to put those two energies together from what he had worked out and what he'd seen of our work before and from meeting us. It was just always easy with her, and it really felt easy. And I think when something's really well written and you're working with someone who's great and you feel very comfortable in the role and with the dialogue, it can feel easy. You're still terrified, but like once you're in it, you just find this rhythm with each other. We just found that rhythm really quick. I think our preparation was similar. We both want to have fun. That seemed to be a real theme with the whole cast. You know, such powerhouse actors in there outside of Caitriona, with the rest of the family of Ciarán Hinds and Judi Dench, but they similarly just came to have fun. You know, there's no leave me alone, I need and I'm not breaking character here. Like there's none of that. Like everyone has their own way of doing it, and it's not like I don't have moments where I will be like, I just need a minute here to get myself into the right headspace. And we all do that. But for the most part, it was a very buoyant and fun set where we were making each other laugh, telling each other about what we were up to, and then suddenly we were filming. And it just kept that sort of openness with each other and sense of family, that we all really understood each other. Life would be easy if I could do every job of Caitriona Balfe. Oh my god! Honestly, everyone like this industry is like for whatever reason, there's just not enough made of. There's too much made of actors, and they get too much of the attention. But like so much of it, like hair and makeup, particularly on every job, are so crucial because you're with them from the moment you arrive in right up until you step on set, and everywhere in between. They are your sounding board. They are often the people who just put you in the right head space for the day. They're crucial. They're crucial for your overall enjoyment of a job, because they're the people you outside of the actors you spend most of the time with. So I'd say hair and makeup for every job I've ever done, because that truck is that's where everything's said. That's where all the secrets come out. That's where all the frustrations come out. That's sometimes where the wine comes out at the end of the day. It's like that's like the hub. Like the rest of the world, normal people came out at a time when everyone was just indoors, hungry for some great content, and we got this gift of a show and these two just phenomenal performances. And I don't do this very often, but A, the industry's tiny. B, Ireland is even smaller, so it was like a very easy way to get in touch with Paul Mescal. Like within a minute of asking for his number, I had it, and I just got in touch and just was like, told him how inspired I was by his work, and and now we have a nice little relationship where we sort of like chat to each other sometimes, and I think it's important to reach out like that with people. But I thought what he did was really special. Daisy Edgar Jones was incredible too. Directors, I'm always slightly hesitant to talk about direct because I feel like it probably just won't happen. You just be like a fanboy for the rest of your life, and you'll actually never get to work with these people. But there's a few. I tell you, I met Barry Jenkins a couple of times and hung out with him a bit of Telluride this year, and that was a sincere thrill for me. Like, I'm such a fan of his. So even just meeting him and chatting to him and just like pretending you're his friend for a couple of hours was kind of enough for me. Maybe I don't even need to work with him. That was enough. I got my fix.